businesses are living organisms in my mind. They're alive and they can actually live forever. But people get in the way of that. And so how can we intervene and help people, the leaders, the owners, the managers, how can we help them get out of the way and actually be a catalyst for helping their business perpetuate and hopefully live forever?
Welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and excited today because we get to unpack and dive a lot deeper into a topic that we've sort of touched the surface of. We had some conversation and we left you asking for more, and today we're going to deliver that. We're talking about succession planning, and it's becoming more and more of an issue with our aging business owners and how they actually transfer the wealth of their business through succession to the next generation. And it is becoming critical with so many business owners. In Australia, the stat is about 50% of small, medium businesses are owned by people over the age of 50, all looking to, exit from their business and leave it in I'm going to say better hands, younger hands to keep pushing forward with that business and create that long-lasting legacy. So we're going to dive into it in a lot more detail today, and I'm delighted to have Rob Ferguson with us, who's a seasoned CEO, trusted advisor to family businesses, and he's led companies through 10x growth, turned around struggling operations, overseen more than $100 million in acquisitions. He's the founder of the Ferguson Alliance, and he's on a mission to help family businesses live infinitely. And he's got a passion for creating value and succession and long-term continuity of the business, the hard work that you've created, making sure that continues and well after you've left the business. So how do you actually increase the value of a business and make sure it is a successful exit or transition? Rob's going to help us look at that today and unpack some personal tips there, and also focusing on some of the relationships that you need to really enhance and work to make sure that this is a success. But I'm not going to spoil it too much. I'm going to invite Rob to the microphone. Rob, welcome to the Business Behind Your Business.
Thank you, Paul. Really, it's nice to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
So am I. It's something that I'm passionate about, and I know you're passionate about, is actually creating that continuance of the business. And I think, we touched on this several episodes ago when we were talking about the great wealth transfer and some of the difficulties that business owners are now encountering in transferring their business and the wealth they've created to the next generation, whether that be their own family or employees coming through. But you've got a lot of experience in this, and you've had some very successful outcomes achieved for your clients. Why is it so important to deal with this idea of building a succession plan for your business?
Yeah. So interesting statistic that you gave about your country. Here in the United States, I would say that over 65% of our GDP is related to family businesses. Over 70% of employment is with family businesses. The majority of our philanthropy comes from family businesses. All of the most significant innovations that came out of the United States came from family businesses. So 35% of our publicly traded companies are owned by families and controlled by families. I mean, family business is so important, not just to the United States economy, but to the whole world economy. And the reason why it's such a passion for me is because I also think it's a real big problem that people don't know about. In the 1960s in the United States, the average lifespan of all businesses, back then they didn't divide it between family and non-family, but all business was over 60 years. I think it might have been 62, but let's just call it 60 years. Today, the average lifespan of a family business is 24 years. And S&P 500 here in the United States, that average lifespan is 15 years. So to me, if our main driver of GDP, innovation, philanthropy, and employment is declining over that. It's gone from 60 years to 24 years. That's a problem. Now, I know this show, we're not going to be talking about, well, why do we think that is and what's causing it? But that's what's driven me to understand that, really businesses are living organisms in my mind. They're alive and they can actually live forever, but people get in the way of that. And so how can we intervene and help people, the leaders, the owners, the managers? How can we help them get out of the way and actually be a catalyst for helping their business perpetuate and hopefully live forever? So that's why it's important to me.
Oh, that's great. I really love the way that you've spelled that out. And I think if we look at figures for GDP and employment stats, the Australian figures are not too different. And I know that the UK and other parts of the world, we're talking about similar figures. Small, medium, growing family businesses, absolutely critical to every economy worldwide. So it's important for us to get that right. But I also fear, as an advisor to those industries, that they've been one of the most neglected in the past. They haven't benefited from some of the best advice that they could get.
Right. Exactly. That's right. And that's why you're in the business you're in. That's why I'm in the business I'm in, trying to help deliver that best advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of my frustrations, and I'm going to see how you're actually helping to get past this, is one of my frustrations is that a lot of business owners don't believe they need to have an exit plan or a succession plan because it's not on their time frame. It's not on their roadmap at the moment. But why is it important to start thinking about your succession and your exit at this very point in time?
So that is a common obstacle. And in fact, we just had a client in our offices last month, and he was talking about his succession plan was to die at the desk. And he had his wife with him. And I said, okay, well, that's great. Well, how do you think that's going to help your survivors? How's it going to help your employees? How's it going to help your customers if that's the case? Oh, he said, everybody's going to be fine. My wife's going to have a lot of money. The business is going to be worth a lot. It's just going to be great. And so in his mind, he believed that it was money that was going to be his legacy. Okay. I turned to his wife and I asked her, well, how do you feel about that? Is that going to make you feel secure and good? And she said, absolutely not. She said, that's the worst plan I've ever heard. I said, well, what are you looking for? Well, he's worked in this business for 44 years. He's never taken a day of vacation. I'd like to travel. I want to spend time with him. I don't want him to die at his desk. That's horrible. I don't want the money. I don't care about the money. Well, what about the employees and what about the customers? And he gets said, well, I never thought about that. And he happened to be, he was a great guy, wonderful guy, but the benevolent dictator. He had a very successful business, but he was in the center of the hub of the wheel. So all decisions led to him. So you take him out, then there is no business. Yeah, oh yeah, he's got inventory and buildings and but there's no business. He was the business. And he began to see that. Working through our process, he began to have a better understanding. And the reason why most business owners resist is because they're afraid to lose their purpose in life. So I had one business owner call me up. He decided his sons did not want the business, so his exit was to sell the business. I helped him do that. Right before funding, he calls me. It's almost midnight when he calls. I pick up the phone, and he said, this is the worst day of my life. I said, how could this be the worst day of your life? You're getting money, so much money. You've never seen this before. I mean, this is life-changing. He said, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. I'm going to sell my band. So that's when I realized. He said he sold his soul. So he's lost his purpose. And so what we do is we have to help the owners understand that it's a fable that they've told themselves over 30 or 40 or 50 years that their purpose in life is this business. Because we work them through an exercise. I ask them, okay, I want you to go talk to your children, your grandchildren, your neighbors, your best friend, your college roommate, whoever. Go talk to those people that are closest to you and ask them, who are you for them? Who are you to them? And you tell me what they tell you. They come back and nobody ever said, oh, well, you're this great CEO or you built this wonderful. They don't even know what business you're in most of the time. So their purpose is bigger. We have to help them find a better or a bigger purpose than just creating a business. So that's our most common obstacle is they're afraid that they're not going to have anything to do tomorrow when they transition that business to their daughter, or if they end up selling their business to their competitor, they've just lost their purpose.
So it's two key points there that you've raised that I'd like to sort of get some more thoughts on. Is that the conversation when somebody's about to decide it's time to leave their business? Two big issues there. The first one is you take that person out of the business. There's no business. I've had so many unfortunate conversations where somebody said to me, right, I'm about to retire. How much can I get for my business? And I've said 0. And they said, why? And I said, well, when we take you out of the business, there's nothing left. No value. There's nothing. And I think that and Australian men have a real problem with this, a real, I guess, an ego problem. We don't like to let go of the control. We like to be that person who makes every decision. But I think the second one there that's really important, and I don't think a lot of people think about this, is as you said, what do I do the day after I've sold my business? I've lost my purpose. And it's very hard to go from being the business owner one day, fully invested, to I don't have a business. Who am I? The next day, it's a big adjustment. And I know so many business owners who have sold their business, regretted it instantly, and then had to start up a new business the next week because they didn't know what to do. And I'm going through that conversation myself with a client, and he says, I don't really know what I want to do when I sell my business. I said, well, we need to think about that, because at some point you're going to finish up in the business. We need to have a plan.
Yeah, I totally agree. And so we spend probably a third of our workshops on succession planning, just on that, helping them realize that. And they're always, our clients are always surprised that that's where we start. They said, well, I thought I was coming to, this one guy said, I thought I was coming to talk about my business. Now you're talking about me. I said, what? Well, yeah, I mean, it's interrelated, right? You are the business is you. And so I want you to avoid this feeling of losing purpose. And so we kind of help guide them along the way of how to discover that. And we've just been so successful in helping women and men that own their business to find that purpose afterwards. And it's amazing how their life has changed, but also how well their business has performed after them. I think that's the real key or measurement. When do you start succession planning? If you're a business owner and you haven't started it, you're already late. I truly believe this, that the day you launch a business, you need to be thinking about, how am I going to transition out? Or what are the trigger events that I need to be worried about from contingency planning? You and I were just talking about John Warlaw and the book that he wrote, Built to Sell. That's one of the things that he really talks about. You want to build it to sell your business. That's his philosophy. Well, most of our clients don't want to sell their business. About a third do. The majority, they want to keep it in the family. They want to pass it on from one generation to the next. So just change it, built for transition. How are you going to build your business so it can transition from one generation to the next generation? That is, to me, when you start the day you launch your business.
Yeah. It's a different mindset And I think a lot of people think they're never going to exit their business. But if you design your business right from the beginning, that you could sell it at any point. I always feel that if you're designing it for a sale where somebody can walk in and take over your business, you're going to be creating a better business.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. To your earlier point about your client said, "Hey, how much is my business worth?" And you told them 0. That we know through research as well as our practical experience that 75% of the value in a business is with the intangible assets, not the tangible assets, not the inventory, not the buildings. It's the intangibles, what you're talking about. And so those intangibles are your brand, your customer relationships, your people, your organization structure, your processes, your systems, all of that. That is what's so key. And if you can build that so it's not dependent on you, then you're going to increase the value of your business theoretically 75% if you don't have it in place. So it's a huge multiplier.
Mm. Yeah. And I think the other thing, when we're talking about value of a business, we're often talking that value is, I guess, an end result of the profitability of the business.
Right.
And I think one of the things I point out to people is that to increase the value, it's got to be a profitable business.
Yeah.
And if we can increase your profit, we're going to increase your value. But you know what? If we increase your profit as you're going, you're going to be better off.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you, Paul. I like to characterize it as the company sets the profit, the market sets the multiple. So everybody wants to know, okay, well, how do you value business? Well, it's pretty simple math, right? You take your profit times a multiple, and that's the value, less any debt. Okay, pretty standard. But if the company sets the profit and there's no profit, there's not going to be any value. So if you can create as much profit as you can, that's going to have a significant impact on the value of the business. But the market, the multiplier, is it a 5x, is it a 7x, is it a 2x? That's set by the market. And then what happens is if you don't have these intangible assets in good order that we're just talking about, you're going to get discounted. So maybe the market's trading at par at 5 times your profit, but if you're plucked out of the center of the decision-making role, because all the decisions lead through you, that now it's 0. So 0 times whatever profit you're making, to your client's point, is still 0. But if you build that infrastructure, not only can you get the market multiple, but you will get accretion, right? You'll get a higher multiple because you're not dependent. The business isn't dependent on you as the owner. And as they understand that and they get that, then we can help them discover how to build that. I'm sure you've had talked to your clients. I've done this. I'll ask a room full of business owners, how many of you are the first ones to arrive to the office? They all raise their hand. How many of you are paid the most? About half the room raise their hand, but the other half don't. How many of you are the last to leave the office? They all raise their hand. How many of you know your top 10 customers? They're all raise their hand. How many do you know their wives and their children? Oh, they all raise their hand. They're all proud of them. I said, well, congratulations. You're an employee. You're not an owner. And so it's a paradigm shift to get a better idea or understand, well, what is a role of an owner versus the role of an employee? You know, so many of our owners, we call it the founder's trap. They get stuck in the founder's trap, and they just become, an employee of the business as opposed to an owner of the business. And so we help them, get out of that trap by building the systems and the structure and the processes, and bringing in the talent to help them become an owner and not an employee.
Hmm. And that process that you help them through, I need to state the obvious. That's not an overnight program that you turn up for the workshop, you get your certificate, and suddenly your business is worth a lot more the next day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, so our rule of thumb is if an owner has at least 3 years, we like if 5 years is better. If you have that kind of a timeline for transition, there's a lot that can be done to help increase the value of the business, right? If you're on a 3, 5, 7 year, 10 years, even better horizon, there's a lot that can be done to increase the value of the business and prepare the business for succession and prepare the successors for succession. But if you've got 24 months, 12 months, 18 months, it's like putting lipstick on a pig. I mean, the business is the business. And so you can't really do a lot with the overall value of the business. And that's our opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I fully agree with you there. Fully agree. So you've developed a process, a plan. I think you call that the prosperity plan. Yeah. Do you want to talk us through, I guess, some of the key features of that? I think you've got 3 key pillars in that program.
So the way to think about this, for the way we think about it, is we look at a business life cycle, and from the very beginning to the peak to the down. And so our job as guides to business owners is, how do we help these business owners not get to the peak, but to create another trajectory to a new peak? Because we believe once the business gets to the peak of their life cycle, that's just the beginning of the downside. So we define prosperity not necessarily in terms of dollars, but where a business gets into the prosperity zone is when they can balance being very flexible and entrepreneurial with structure. Because you don't want structure to overshadow flexibility in a business, right? Because you're going to become too bureaucratic, you won't be competitive, you're not nimble. But if you let the flexibility overshadow structure, you're going to be chasing shiny objects and you'll never get anything done or accomplished. So once a business can build a business model that keeps that in balance, you've now reached the zone of prosperity. But once you're there, how do you keep it there? Well, the only way you can keep it there is it evolves. You got to recreate again. So that's what we're talking about. And we believe that family businesses have major pain points, that they don't have qualified leadership or qualified people. They don't have process and structure, and they don't have harmony amongst their family shareholders with multiple family members, or harmony amongst their employees. So our plan for prosperity helps solve that. And what we are doing is building a structure with the proper governance for a family business. And part of that governance is also the foundation of culture. So we think we have a lot to talk about family business culture, but governance and culture, making sure there's a shared vision and a shared purpose amongst the family members as well as the employees and key leaders. A real strong organization strength, both in structure and leadership, putting in a robust system for managing. And by doing these things, taking these elements, you then are going to create and find that equilibrium between structure and flexibility, in a nutshell. But most of our clients, we go through this process, takes about anywhere from 9 to 12 months to get it going and get it happening. And then they realize it's a flywheel, right? It's continuous improvement in all those elements, those drivers, so to speak, that I just talked about. And, we try to give them the tools and the process to keep all of those flywheels spinning.
Yeah. So it's a long-term process, but it's also a continual process, because I think a lot of people think, oh, right, if I get to the end of that 12 months, I'm set. But as you mentioned, you've got to keep evolving and changing. And I'm not going to say reinventing, but I guess recreating the next peak, as you mentioned.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So a lot of people are going to be thinking, well, I can get the book, I can look at this, and I can say, right, I can do this myself. Why is it beneficial to work with somebody like yourself to achieve the best results?
Yeah, because it's not the outcome of the plan that goes on the 8.5 by 11 page. It's the conversation that got you there. It's the struggles, it's the dialogue, and having a third party, unbiased, unrelated member in there asking the tough questions. That's the value. And helping facilitate the conversations in a way, because when we're doing succession plan, we have to have very difficult conversations. Like, how are family members going to come into the business? What are the qualities, the qualifications for a family member to come into the business? How do you fire a family member? Some of those things are tough, and so we go through that. By having a third party perspective in there, a third party facilitator, it actually helps build harmony. We believe that if we can help the family deal with conflict in a process way, their relationships actually strengthen. That we're all about strengthening the family relationships, not breaking those down. So anyway, the way we get started, Paul, I'll go ahead and insert this, is we start every client engagement in our succession planning with one question. And it's really a hard one for them to answer. Usually takes a couple of sessions to answer. And that question is, are you a family first business or a business first family? And then define your answer. What does that mean? Why does it mean? And so a lot of times I'll get a very quick reaction from our business owners or from the family that's there. And they think it's a value centered question, like, oh no, it's God, family, business, and then football, there's kind of order like that. And it's not necessarily value centered. It's where's the most senior priorities, and when you think about the intersection between business and family, where's the priority, and how do you define that? Why do you define that? And everybody always wants to know, well, what's the right answer? Well, the right answer is what you answer it and that you'll live by. So I will tell you that business first families have a higher success rate of generational transition than family first businesses. Right? So that just depends. There's no knock against a family first business, which are lifestyle businesses. There's great lifestyle businesses out there, and they do a wonderful job. But at the end of the day, it's really hard to transition a family first business, because as the family grows, right, and all you're doing is you got more mouths to feed, and you're having to put Uncle Joe into a role that Uncle Joe's not qualified for, but he's family. We're going to put family as a priority first. It gets really, really hard to perpetuate that business for any length of time. But if you're business first family, you define what that is and what does that mean, and you do it early, really early. That way, next generations understand that and they get that, and then that business can survive for multiple generations and actually do a lot of good in this world, as we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, how important these family businesses are to our world's economy and philanthropy and innovation.
Yeah, and that's great. Look, I'm loving what I'm hearing. I'm hoping everybody else is taking as many notes as I have been, and wanting to know what's the next step. And I think we talked about the prosperity plan that you've developed. You've actually summarized some of the key points, I think, and the process in a book that our listeners can go to your website and download. And the website is Ferguson-Alliance.com.
That's correct, yes. Ferguson-Alliance.com. We have an ebook called The Prosperity Plan that's available there. We do have a little assessment that you can take for that. I would also direct your listeners to go to our resource page, and in there we have something we call the Ultimate Family Business Guide. And it includes all of our thought leadership on this and many, many other topics. And it's arranged by topic, but also nice little search feature, but webinars, podcasts, white papers, blogs, articles we've written for other magazines. It's all in there, all of our thought leadership. And I hopefully that you can find some insightful nuggets of gold in there.
Absolutely. Rob, if there was one thing that you would encourage our leaders, our listeners to start with right now, what would that be for them to start creating their succession plan?
Well, I know it's a little bit of a slip on your part. You said leaders and then listeners, but any listener that is a leader of a business, if you don't have a succession plan, you're already late. You need to start it and start it right away. Not only plan succession, but think about contingency plans for emergencies. You know, that's we're not going to live forever, and life events happen. So I would say every business leader should start. If you're not a leader of a business, but you work in a business, go ahead and ask your leaders, hey, what's the succession plan around here? I would be interested and concerned about that if I was an employee as well.
Oh, absolutely. So some great advice, some great points for us to take on board, and some great resources for us to go and have a look at Ferguson-Alliance.com. Grab a copy of the Prosperity Guide or Prosperity Plan, and look, don't keep this to yourself. There are plenty of other business owners out there that need to hear this as well. Make sure you share this conversation with them. Available on every podcast platform, on YouTube, and of course at the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website. And once again, please go and have another look at the Prosperity Guide at Ferguson-Alliance.com. Well worth your time to have a look at that, and certainly some great content, but great prompts about getting started today and not putting it off. Very, very good words, encouraging, but also words with purpose. We need to get started. You can't leave it till the last minute, because you don't want to have that conversation with me where you say, what's my business worth? And I have to tell you, it's not worth anything. Not a pleasant situation for any of us to be in. So don't become that. Take the advice that Rob has shared with us today and get started. So, Rob, thank you again for joining us on The Business Behind Your Business.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Enjoyed it.